I nearly dropped my plate of warm chocolate chip cookies when flashing blue and red lights crept slowly up my gravel lane, reflecting through the trees like a silent parade of fireworks. 4 patrol cars rolled to a stop in front of my little log cabin by Alderben Lake, their strobe lights bouncing off the tall pines and sending a flock of geese exploding into the air in a panicked V formation. And behind those deputies, hands on hips, chin lifted like she was staging a royal inspection, stood Denise Carroll, the HOA president from across the cove, gripping her leather binder like a blunt weapon and pointing at me as though she had personally identified the most dangerous fugitive in the state. The first deputy stepped toward me cautiously, his hand hovering just above his holster as he glanced down at the old fishing pole leaning harmlessly against the porch railing, then back at me with a furrowed brow. "Sir, we received a 911 call about a violent trespasser threatening residents with a firearm and blocking access to community property," he said, voice firm and rehearsed. I blinked at him, confused. "A firearm?" I asked, pointing at the pole. "You mean my fishing stick?" But Denise was already storming forward, badge on a lanyard swinging around her neck like a discount sheriff star. "That man refuses to leave our shoreline," she announced, her voice sharp enough to slice bark off a tree. "He's harassing families, erecting unapproved structures, and storing private equipment on common property. I demand he be removed immediately." The deputy glanced around, 2 camp chairs, a beat-up canoe, a tiny sign hammered into the sand that read "Pop's Spot, no whining, only fishing." His eyebrows lifted in open skepticism before he turned back to Denise. "Ma'am, do you have any proof that this shoreline is under your HOA jurisdiction?" Her binder clutched tighter, she replied. "I am the president of the Alderben Lakeside HOA, I am the proof." I excused myself to set the cookies inside and returned carrying a yellowed envelope along with certified county records I had kept tucked away since the day I bought the property decades ago. "This," I said, handing the papers to the deputy, "is where things get awkward." He unfolded the plat map, studied the inked lines, and his eyes shot wide. "Ma'am," he said slowly, rotating the map for her to see, "according to county records, not only is he allowed to be here, he owns every inch of shoreline your HOA is claiming, including your boat ramp." I popped a cookie into my mouth and gave her the most sympathetic nod I could muster. "Next time," I told her kindly, crumbs falling into my beard, "maybe check the deed before calling the cops on a grandpa sitting at his own dock." In 72 years of life, I had been called a lineman, husband, dad, pop, and the guy who makes the world's best venison jerky, but never a problem tenant for an HOA. I bought this cabin 40 years ago, back when Alderben Lake was nothing but forest, squirrels, and mosquitoes with a personal space problem. My cabin sat alone at the end of a rutted lane, overlooking a quiet crescent shoreline that I cleared and maintained myself. My grandkids loved it so much they called it simply the cabin, as if no other cabin deserved the title. Then the developers came. 15 years ago, they leveled part of the woods and built Sycamore Shores, fancy brochure community, copy-paste houses, and an HOA with more rules than residents. I watched their beige boxes multiply while I minded my business, chopped wood, fixed my dock, and ignored the unauthorized docks prohibited sign they nailed into a tree on my side of the cove. Then Denise Carroll moved in. 3 years ago, became HOA president in about 5 minutes, ponytail tight enough to cut steel, carried clipboards like they were weapons, obsessed with 2 phrases per HOA guidelines, and as I already explained in my email, first attack came taped to my door, notice of violation, unapproved structure. She claimed my ancient dock, which had been there before she was even born, didn't meet HOA standards and threatened fines, $100 per day. I scribbled "not in HOA" on the notice and mailed it back, but instead of that ending the feud, it apparently sounded like a trumpet starting a war. Soon she was leaving photographs of my roof, grainy zoom-ins from across the cove, with angry notes claiming my tin roof did not match neighborhood aesthetic expectations. Then she complained about a beach towel and SpongeBob swim trunks left to dry on my deck. More notes, more photos. Then she personally started surveying my land, walking my path, counting steps, pretending to inspect erosion while peering around like she could bully boundaries into moving. When she brought out a measuring tape, I asked if she'd lost something. She hissed back, "You are lowering property values." One evening, a drone buzzed above the dock trying to spy on, I don't know, my non-compliant wood. That's when my grandkids asked, "Why is that lady always filming us?" So I installed cameras. Not to escalate, but to protect my peace. The more I ignored her petty crusade, the more she escalated. And when she finally ran out of fake violations to tape to my door, she called the cops, with a story so dramatic it deserved a popcorn-eating audience. According to her emergency call, I was an armed, drunken, mentally unstable old man threatening to shoot anyone who approached community shoreline. Meanwhile, I was grilling burgers in an apron that read, "Kiss the cook if you're my grandkid," while 2 ketchup-covered little ones were arguing over who dropped more cheese slices. The deputies found no guns, no threats, no intoxication, just a confused grandfather and happy children. The officers reviewed my camera footage and grew visibly irritated. One deputy told Denise with icy politeness that the shoreline was mine and that she had been seen multiple times on my property. Meanwhile, her claims of danger had zero basis. Filing a false police report is a serious offense, but that was only the beginning of the unraveling. Within a week, county officials, surveyors, risk managers, every clipboard-carrying person you can imagine paraded across my deck. My niece Mandy, an actual real estate lawyer, rushed over and spent hours digging through county archives. When she returned, she slapped a stack of documents on my table with a grin. "Good news and more good news," she said. First, my deed was ironclad. I not only owned the shoreline, I owned out to the high water mark. Second, the developer had promised lake access in brochures but never recorded easements, meaning every homeowner had been sold fake waterfront privileges. The HOA structures, boat ramp, tiki hut, private members-only signs were trespassing on my land. Panic spread across Sycamore Shores like wildfire. Residents filmed the police incident and now questioned everything. Mandy and I drafted a letter offering a generous deal. I'd grant individual homeowners legal access, reasonable one-time fee, recorded properly. But I would not negotiate through the HOA. The HOA's insurance company found out and suddenly wondered whether they were liable for misrepresentation and unlawful enforcement. Denise, once drunk on authority, was now drowning in consequences. The HOA called a special emergency meeting at the community center. The room was packed, standing room only. People held brochures and copies of the email packet titled Lake Access and HOA Liability. Denise sat front and center, knuckles white around her binder, ponytail pulled even tighter. Residents demanded answers, furious about being lied to. The HOA lawyer looked like he needed a vacation and several aspirins. Just as Denise tried to spin her version of reality, the doors opened and in walked Deputy Martinez, followed by the county records clerk carrying a giant map. They unrolled it on the table, parcel 17 Bracken labeled boldly along the entire shoreline of the cove. Gasps rippled across the room. Martinez stated calmly, the shoreline was not HOA property, never had been, and every structure they built there was trespassing. Then came the kicker. Miss Carroll has been cited for filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services. The crowd erupted, not angry at me but at her. Mandy slid forward a document, a motion to remove Denise as president plus an amendment limiting HOA harassment of non-members. The vote took minutes. Nearly every hand rose to remove her. Power gone, title stripped. Her binder, once a symbol of control, now just a pile of irrelevant paper. The judge handling her case was not amused. He fined her $5,000, warned her against abusing law enforcement again, and sentenced her to community service, specifically shoreline cleanup duty at Alderbend Lake every Saturday for 3 months, wearing a bright vest that read volunteer. When the gavel fell, her shoulders slumped, eyes wide with disbelief as reality crashed down. Meanwhile, I returned to my cabin, poured myself a quiet drink, hugged my grandkids, and enjoyed a peaceful evening by the lake, exactly what I'd been trying to do all along.